7 names, no games as I run it down the line. We got Kenny Ken, put 100 on the tees with the streak for the cash. He ESPN. Seth Curry with the shot. The prodigy. In reality, he's more like Seth, but he's all we got. Up next is Gentleman Jack, better known as Junior Blue. We told him not to do it anyway, but he did what he do. To his right is Devin, that dude, L-Dad or Dirt Ass Dan. Just don't ask him a question, cause then he'll answer your question with another question, and then he'll add another question on top of that question. Damn. And I'm Red O, the Buck Wild Problem Child.
Flow Butter, aka John Cutter.
It's the league ambassadors, and we playing to win. At the 2-yard line, and make no mistake, we running it in. Pete Carroll, we see you.
Thank you for visiting 32 Kings Road, hosted by the League Ambassadors. This is episode 1 of season 3, our 46th time hanging out on 32
Season
Kings
what again?
Season 3.
Jesus Lord.
And I'm Ambassador Kenny Ken, and it is my pleasure to be here today with my brothers. As a reminder, you can follow us everywhere on social media. Our handle is @TheLeagueAM. That is Twitter, that is Facebook, that is Instagram. Also, please check out our website, theleagueam.com. Please like and subscribe and rate our YouTube channel, which is The League Ambassadors. On today's show, we're going to get right into our NFL International Series preview, where we will be discussing the history of the Seattle Seahawks. We are also going to announce and acknowledge our first Brexit boot bag winner of 2018. Already.
We just got here.
He took all of the cake. And then we're going to get into some football tea, some hot topics. And so I'm super excited to be here. This is season 3, Dad. What you sipping on, sir?
Sipping on a little Irish Uncle Jamie here. Let's get the season started off right. What I'm actually sipping on is, since the U.S. Open in tennis started yesterday, the fact that it has been 22 years since Steffi Graf won her last U.S. Open title.
22?
22,
Making
man.
me feel old.
Steffi
Time flies.
She was a beast.
Steffi killed it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sipping on some Tullamore Dew, Irish whiskey.
Say that again.
Tullamore Dew. And I'm sipping on a beautiful women's rights, I should say, article that's on the Players Tribune. Please check it out. That was written by Stephen Curry. Steffi wrote a beautiful article. It was passionate. It was enlightened. And it was very encouraging to read. Basically, he talked about the fact that, now that he's got 2 daughters, the issue of women's rights, it means more to him. It's important to him. And so if you get a chance, check out the Players Tribune, check out his article. He's a really good guy. Steph. Junior Blue. What you sipping on, sir?
I'm sipping on this Honey Jack here. And, I'm sipping on this 9 days till the NFL season starts.
Yes.
And basically, you know what? That signifies the end of summer for me. But I want a couple things left in the summer.
Okay.
Like some summer songs like that Kiki, Do You Love Me? I want that left because my kids is running the house talking about Steffi, do you love me? Are you riding? Let's leave that in the summer, please.
All right, Redo. What you sipping on, sir?
I'm sipping on that gentleman, Lil Jameson.
Oh, hey.
Ginger ale Jameson. Gotta start off right. But what I want is a show of hands. Kev, you can sit this one out. I want a show of hands for my brothers right here in LA. Now, I want to vote on Kevin coming out here. When you coming out here, Kevin?
December 18th at the soonest.
So I want the vote is in December 18th. Should Kevin bring out his girlfriend Steffi? It looks like a unanimous vote to me, Kev.
Kev, what you sipping on, baby? What you sipping on, Kev?
You bringing her, Kev?
Uh-huh.
Hi, Steffi.
But, Hello there.
You wanted him back, you got him.
Well, lucky for Omar, this is an hour-long show, so I can't criticize him for wasting any time. I'm going to start by saying I am sipping on this light blue Gatorade, trying to keep myself together until football season starts. I'm also just now years old, realizing that Gatorade actually has real flavor names. Like, this is Glacier Freeze. I thought it was just the light blue flavor, but we'll keep the ball rolling. Today, our main sipping on.
Just gonna keep that straight face and keep rolling.
Hey, man, hey, it ain't easy. So the main topic we'll speak on tonight, Kenya, you're going to hell. Is
your family.
The NFL rule change pertaining to players' use of the helmet to initiate contact and how the league has decided to officiate it. So in the first 2 weeks of the preseason, refs have thrown 51 flags penalizing players for using the helmet to initiate contact in those 33 games. But just last week, there were 9 penalties called on it for the 16 games that were played. And the league's approach to officiating it, of course, has garnered criticism from both fans and players who think that the new rule is ultimately making football impossible to play. So, with that being said, I'll pose a question to the group and we'll discuss. First off, what do you make of the rule and the officiating of the rule so far in the preseason?
I'll start it off with, I just think it makes it that much harder to play defense now, especially since the offensive players in these particular situations are initiating the contact. There was a play in the Ravens-Dolphins game where a cornerback was bracing himself, lowered his shoulder so he could get his helmet out of the way, kind of like how you tackle when you first learn how to tackle playing Pee Wee football because you're afraid of contact, because he knew that the penalty was coming. And the ball carrier dipped his head, and then that's how that contact happened, and that's why the flag was called. If he would have went up to him and tackled him like he's been taught his entire life, he might not have gotten the penalty. And I know, Les, we were talking about this. You had a very good point about running backs.
Yeah, I mean, what we're about to see is these big backs, the Christian Okoyes, about to come back because you're not going to be able to tackle them. I mean, if you try to tackle somebody...
Derrick Henry.
Yeah, if you try to tackle somebody, your first instinct is to go low on these big backs, on anybody. And I would like to see somebody try to tackle somebody with their shoulder and not dip their head.
I hate when y'all make me agree with the goddamn NFL.
I mean, you always towing the company line.
Jesus Lord.
What are you talking about?
I just think there's always, every year, there's something called the preseason freakout. It happens every freaking year where fans find a reason to freak out over something. The refs, they change the rules every year. The refs call them insanely close to the vest, and people freak out. By the time the season starts, teams adjust, just like when they changed the rules for no launching, keep your head up when you're tackling. It took a couple years to adjust, but everybody adjusted. There's always fight from teams, but it's all about training, and then all of a sudden, there's no problem. Just like from week 1 and 2 to week 3, there was a 60% drop-off.
64%.
Even better, on the calls.
Yeah. I agree with you, Omar. That in terms of overall general impact, I completely agree with what you're saying, that you call them tighter in preseason because you want to send the message to be on alert for this.
And the refs are also learning it too.
Exactly. But then as the regular season goes, especially with the numbers that you quoted, Kevin, and the frequency of the calls, and especially when every call is reviewed and you see that the overwhelming majority of these calls are not good calls. But what I also will say, though, is there will be games that will be won or lost
on these calls.
And I think that's the thing that the NFL has to be worried about, because that's not the intent of this. It's supposed to be about player safety. And honestly, I agree. And actually, when you are taught to tackle, you are taught, and if you watch what Bill Belichick said, his press conference, he was like, we're not worried about it because that's not what we teach, and we've never taught that. You can't hit what you can't see, so we don't teach to tackle with your head down. So you're taught, head to the side, wrap up.
But what they're calling is,
And I saw that call.
yeah, we're seeing that
Well,
call. Their head,
here's
when you dip your shoulder, your head anatomically.
But
has to
let's
come down
let's
anyway.
go with the facts. The facts is the NFL told the refs to call it even if it's a remote chance, just so we can have film to teach how
Yeah.
to actually call it.
Right.
So it's not like if that's called during the season, then I understand.
And the other piece to that is it could be that a call should be made. It just should be called on the offensive player. And I think
It has
that's
to be
what
called
you're
both ways,
and
yeah.
I think that's what you're not seeing a lot of in this preseason. And honestly, if there was a point of emphasis for the NFL, you have to sort of retrain these officials because
Right.
traditionally they are trained to look for offensive penalties pre-snap.
And the big thing that came out of this as well is that not one offensive lineman has been called for this, and it was a cause for concern because they thought that out of their break or out of their stance that they would get called for initiating contact, and it hasn't happened once.
Let's again, as I said, they are trained for offensive players to be called pre-snap.
Right.
And then after that, it's holding.
Post-snap, they looking at the exactly. They
looking at defense.
Yeah.
Mike Pereira, how do you say his name?
Pereira, I think. Yeah.
So his quote, he said it's 40 legitimate calls in 34 games with a lot of fouls made by guys who aren't even going to be on these teams when the season starts. The less skilled players who are more apt to make plays like this because they are playing so aggressively trying to make the team.
That's a great point as well.
Yeah, and to that point though, I'm gonna go back to what Kenyon said. In those first 2 weeks, of the 51 flags that were thrown for this specific penalty, 41 were against defensive players, 29 against defensive backs, guys who honestly we all know are brought onto a team to stop someone else. So I look at it like, I mean, it sucks. Of course, it's necessary. You want to preserve player safety, but at the same time, if you don't make that play, if you don't bring that player to the ground, you lose your job.
Right. And the real
but-
thing with that, Kevin, and with defensive backs specifically, it's because typically defensive backs are taught to cut. Well, most defensive backs cut with their head down. And because if you cut with your head up, what you run the risk of is running into somebody's thigh or knee.
And you got it
See
again,
what
right?
happened to Denzel Ward, right? So you're honing in on a key point, which is how do these defensive backs who typically are smaller, how do they make the adjustment on bringing the guys that come to the perimeter, bringing them down?
The real root of the problem is the NFL was sued by ex-players, and how much did they lose
I don't know the figure.
for the CTE shit?
Oh, it
was $1 billion, right?
Yeah.
Billions, right?
Yeah. So in minds of the NFL, I don't want to keep getting sued for $1 billion. So you
Well,
know what?
this-
Y'all
this-
need to tackle different.
Well, almost a great segue, because my next question would be, could the league go about this problem any differently? Because obviously it's a necessary approach, but there are holes in it. There are criticisms around it. So could they go about this differently in addressing player safety while keeping the nature of the sport? Because in my opinion, I'll just throw it out there first to a point Kenyon made. Refs are making these decisions in a split of a second the athletes going full speed, them either not having the best angle or pressure at a certain point of the game to make a call. My thought is you can still discourage players from doing this without penalizing them 15 yards and a first down, which can change the complexion of any game at any point. And especially when you look at the stats where defenders are being held responsible for this more than anybody else, it ultimately is taking that edge out of the game. So you could, in my opinion, maybe fine players or go back and look at these plays after the game and maybe issue a hefty fine as opposed to a 15-yard penalty and a first down every time this happens, because it's something that I don't think the league can necessarily avoid with players trying to make teams.
Spoken like a man who has won Super Bowls with defense only.
That's
one
funny.
Super Bowl. So
Yeah, right. So, Kev, my thought on that is I've never thought that penalizing or fining the players was the answer to the problems, because it doesn't make someone. No one's out there trying to do those things unless your name is Bernard Pollard. But it's the kind of thing that happened in the flow of the game, and it's just something that has been done for almost 100 years. I don't think that that's the way that you penalize them. I mean, I don't know what the answer to that question is, but I do think that we need to have, or the NFL needs to do more investing in better helmets and technology in that aspect of it.
I disagree with what you said. Let me say this. I don't think they could do it any different, to answer your question, because in order for the culture to change, you have to make it punitive. Because teams are going to keep doing
that sounds
what
like slave mentality. Slave owners.
Dad, come on, son.
I'm just saying. I mean, because
that's just the way it is. If you do something wrong at a job, you get fired.
right, because
And
I'm
so
doing
owners-
something with the intent of trying to get over. These players aren't doing something with the intent to try and get over. It just happens.
I
in the
think
course of the game.
I think there's a fine line to that, and I think
but that's a big jump to slavery.
and I think and I do think
hashtag slavery.
and I do think that that's what referees should be looking for. For example, I think what happens when they have these meetings with the refs is that they show them too many examples. They give them information overload, so it becomes hard. They take something that is very black and white, and then they make
the
it
catch,
and
how
then
to catch a football.
Right, exactly, and then they make it a gray issue. You know those hits where it's like, yo, you were just really lazy about what you did, probably because you were out of position and you just hurled yourself into somebody,
Or you're a
and you used your
sociopath.
crown.
Some of them are doing it on.
Was Merriweather used to play for the
Brandon
Yeah,
Merriweather,
Brandon
Bernard
Merriweather.
Pollard,
Yeah.
DJ Swearinger for Washington.
Yep.
Okay. Or, right, that's the malicious, right? But then there's also, like I said, exactly this. You're a safety and you're late on the play and you're just trying to make the play. Well, you still need to be penalized for that. The example that I have is the Malcolm Jenkins hit in the Super Bowl with Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is still asleep right now. He think he in LA, but he's still on the field. He was late, so he launches himself, and it's a head. It's a leading with the head. It's a very easy thing that they're trying to legislate. But I think that they show so many examples, and they put these refs in a tough position where now they're parceling every little nook and cranny, and I think that's where you run into trouble.
I also think it changes during the regular season where it's not parceling every nook and cranny, but you also have to incentivize the players to change, and the only way to incentivize the players to change is to hit their pocketbooks. And
How do we see this carrying over though into the regular season, and not just this year, but into other levels of football, whether it be college, Pop Warner, and on the way down? Because ultimately you want to start from the ground up. So the children that are playing sports now, when they make it to the high levels, they are tackling correctly. How do you guys see this playing out moving forward? Does the league kind of scale this back in the regular season?
Well, they've tried with Pop Warner. Every year you have to go to tackling classes, basically, before coaches have to do it, and they have to teach them every single year. It's almost like they're
Wrap
getting
and
retaught.
roll.
Exactly. So with the NFL,
spoken like a true Pop Warner coach.
just like O said, they had to make the change, and it's better to implement it right away and then let them learn from it. Now,
Les, quick question: Are you teaching the Greg Williams approach to tackling?
Shout out to
Apparently,
Hard Knocks.
if you tackle the way he tells you to tackle, you won't get hurt.
well, I don't know about Greg
Greg
Williams.
Williams is insane.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He's one of the people that would launch himself into somebody just because.
Right.
But
So,
Kev,
I got banned and I get banned again.
yeah, exactly.
I think you answered your question with the first question or first part of that, where you said that it decreased and there weren't that many penalties. I think they were, like O said, doing it over the top so they can get used to that and kind of, get the players used to that, but it's decreased so far. So I think it's not going to spill over too much, and I think they'll be fine by week 1.
It's the NFL's version of how the NBA treats traveling every year. There's a greater emphasis on calling traveling, and then the season starts, and then the superstar players go, and then they just forget about it. But what I will say, as I said before, is it is going to cost Vegas money. It is going to cost some teams a game, because a referee is going to have a moment for whatever reason, and they're going to make a call, and it is going to be the wrong call, and it is going to be costly. So this issue, it won't go away.
Yeah. Speaking of moments.
Speaking of moments.
Hey, Kev, tell Steph I said hi.
Hey, can she come down and say hi? Is she
know
there?
she there.
Not today. I've dedicated tonight to you guys and our fans.
Let's get into
Please
moments.
move on.
Let's get into moments in Hendon. For those of you that have been following us for any length of time, you know that what we like to do, particularly during the first half of the season, is to take the opportunity to sort of preview and promote the NFL International Series by looking at the history of the teams that are participating. This year, we've got, I think, the first game is October the 14th, which we will be attending.
Yes,
the
sir.
Seattle Seahawks versus the Oakland Raiders. And then we've got the...
I hope it turns out better than our trip last
and then
For me, huh?
we've got the Philadelphia Eagles going against the Jaguars, the Jacksonville Jaguars, a.k.a. London's team.
Right.
And then the final game is the Tennessee Titans going against my Los Angeles Chargers.
Ain't that a bitch? It don't even sound right coming out of his
San
mouth.
Diego Superchargers.
So today we're going to start our history segment by focusing on...
Can we say this? These games are going to be good. The games have sucked before.
Maybe.
Nah, these games...
I mean, on paper, yes.
On paper, these
paper,
games
yes.
should be good.
Flo Butter, a.k.a. John.
You should have had it ready, baby. You should have had it ready.
Hey,
So
week.
we will start with the Seattle Seahawks.
Here you are, baby.
And the question for the guys is who should be on the Mount Rushmore for this team? Now, the Seattle Seahawks, I believe they came into fruition in 1976, and they are one of the teams that actually are, I should say, they are the only team to have won an AFC championship as well as an NFC championship. So they've been around for about 40 years, and they've had some good players, a couple of legends, and so let's start right there because with all of us, we all had two players unanimously on this Mount Rushmore. That was Mr. Walter Jones, offensive lineman, as well as Mr. Steve Largent. I will start with you, Junior Blue. Walter Jones, talk to us about Mr. Jones.
There's one stat that I read.
Mm-hmm.
He was a left tackle, blindside. He blocked on 5,500 passing attempts and gave up 23 sacks and got 9 holding calls.
Straight like that.
5703.
5703. I watch games and I see tackles get 3 holding calls in a game, in a half.
And that's a 13-year career.
Damn. Blindside.
Right.
And he got 9 in 5,700 passing attempts.
180 games. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wait, 23 sacks in 12 years?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, he's holding
Just place him on the left side. Don't even worry about it.
180 starts in 180 games.
Yeah.
Insane.
I mean, I feel like he is arguably their best player of all time.
I think he is.
I think he is. If you look at it pound for pound, all the things that he's accomplished. The biggest thing that, aside from all the accolades, were Pro Bowls, and he is a Hall of Famer. But the fact that he was on the NFL's 2000 All-Decade team, first team, and he was ahead of Orlando Pace and Willie Rowe. The other tackle on the other side was Jonathan Ogden. But he was ahead of those guys who are both Hall of Famers. That's just remarkable.
23 sacks.
Wait, even more impressive. How many holding penalties did he have his whole career?
9.
9 holding. His technique was insane.
We're in Redo's in mid-season form,
And I'm a sip again.
Kevin, help us.
But to his point, though, even though he does not deserve my help on today's show,
Yo, you gotta let it go,
rarely
Kev.
ever got help on his side. They never chipped. I mean, they left him out there on the island in pretty much every down. He got the job done. Less than 2 sacks a season?
Yep.
That's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. I mean, and if you think about that draft in 97, he was drafted 6th overall.
Mm-hmm.
And if you normally you can look back at somebody like that and be like, damn, they fucked up the draft. But if you look at it, like, people relatively drafted good because number 1 was Orlando Pace, Hall of Famer.
Okay.
Number 2 which you guys, I think, is Daryl Russell, right?
Yes.
He was a Pro Bowler.
Rest
was
in peace.
also-
Rest in peace.
Well, I mean,
among other things.
y'all had Lincoln Kennedy and Pat Harlow as your other tackle,
Yep.
so you didn't need that position, so that's fine. Then you have Sean Springs, who Seattle drafted, who's a Pro Bowler.
He was nice.
Yeah. And then the Ravens drafted Peter Bower because we had Jonathan Ogden. We didn't need to draft it, so the only team that fucked up was whoever picked up was the Lions, Bryant Westbrook.
Oh, the receiver out of Colorado, I believe. He was trash.
Sean Alexander said half his yards, that 9,429 yards, was because of him.
Because of Walter Jones.
Mid-season form.
So, the second unanimous selection on Seattle's Mount Rushmore is Mr. Steve Largent, who, when he retired, watch what I'm about to say now. When he retired,
Come on now.
he was the best wide receiver
Ever.
ever
Of all time.
of all time.
He's definitely number one on the white boy receiver list.
By far. It's not even close. Yoda.
Who's next?
After Steve Largent,
There is none.
there's a long drop down. Kevin, talk about Steve Largent.
Stephen Michael Largent, to give him his just due. Although he is now a certified Republican candidate, he was by far one of the best wide receivers. Kenyon mentioned that when he retired, he held all major NFL receiving records for receptions, most receiving yards, most touchdown receptions. He had a streak of 177 straight regular season games with a catch. First receiver in NFL history to achieve 100 touchdown receptions in his career.
Bananas.
I mean, dude was insane. He had great hands. When we talk about receivers in the history of the game, for some reason he's left out in terms of his ability, his raw ability to catch the ball. You look at his route running. I mean, he was, for some reason, I think if you put all of the maybe top 5, top 10 receivers together, he was probably the most open when you go back and look at his tape. Like, I mean, butt naked. Like, before A.J. Green was Winnie the Pooh, it was Steve Largent. He was all of his highlights. No one was near him. But what I thought was interesting was that, I hate to make this comparison, but he reminds me a lot of Larry Bird in the sense that, not obviously because he's white, but because he wasn't the most athletic, but he mastered the skill of being a wide receiver. And I think that goes above and beyond what, you can see a lot of talented guys, in the league today, a lot of athletically gifted guys, but they weren't as skilled as Largent was.
Well, to your point about that, he was actually drafted by the Houston Oilers.
Man, let me tell you. I was
He
about to
may
go
be
there.
the only player who's been drafted by another team, but played his whole career with one team.
Because he was on the verge of being cut
Yeah, he was
by
up-
the Houston
and
Oilers.
then they traded him.
They traded
But-
him.
I'll double down
For
on
an
that.
8th round pick.
Eighth round pick. I'll double down on that. Imagine in a world where the NFL's not racist and the Oilers draft Warren Moon when they're supposed to. And they have Warren Moon and Steve Largent.
That's
a
a
black
Super Bowl.
quarterback thrown to a white receiver.
I thought you were going somewhere else with that. I was gonna say that's a Super Bowl team. But yeah. I mean,
Take it another step further. If he played today, of course he would be a New England Patriot for obvious reasons. But imagine in that
Talk about mid-season form.
In today's game, bruh, he may have been statistically the best wide receiver to ever play, but ifs and buts.
And as a rookie, when the Oilers traded him, he had 54 more receptions than any receiver on the Oilers team.
So they fucked up.
They fucked up. Royally.
all right. So now moving into where we had some difference of opinions. Kevin and Devin, the brothers Johnson had Sean Alexander on their respective Mount Rushmores. Kev, talk to us about Mr. Alexander.
Mr. Sean with the U, Alexander, 3-time Pro Bowler, 05 MVP. He was the 2001-2005 rushing touchdown leader. What stuck out to me with him, though, was that he had his best performances on primetime television, which was some of the only times I would see Seahawk games on that time. But, I mean, you look at the 266-yard game he had against Lester's Raiders on, I believe it was Sunday Night Football.
It was.
He had
Did
5
give y'all
touchdowns.
266.
He had 5 touchdowns and a half against
first
Minnesota. He put up 200 yards against the Packers in the snow on Monday night. I mean, when the lights were on, Sean Alexander came to play. And some of the records that he set, put up against his contemporaries in the time, he ran for 100 yards against divisional opponents in 9 straight games, which was a record held by Walter Payton. In 2005, he joined Emmitt Smith, Priest Holmes, Marshall Faulk as the only running backs to record consecutive seasons of 20 or more touchdowns. I mean, he stacked points on the board, whether it was receiving, rushing. What I did see that was necessary, I could be foreshadowing a little bit, but we talk about a current coach in Seattle for some of his missteps, but Mr. Mike Holmgren kind of started this idea of not giving his running back the ball on the goal line when he was supposed to, because Sean Alexander should have set the I think it was a rushing title for that year to beat out Curtis Martin.
Yep.
And instead they didn't, and it became a whole ordeal between him and Holmgren for at least a week. But yeah, we know where that started. They shortchanged my man Sean.
My thing about Sean is that out of all of those things that you mentioned, he is like the most forgotten running back, like in that entire era. But he was second team in for the decade of 2000s for the All-Pro team, and that has LT, Edgerrin James, Jamal Lewis.
Yeah, it may have something to do with him being from Kentucky. No one remembers anybody from Kentucky.
But he is also
Or Seattle.
He is the first player to ever be on the cover of NCAA football and Madden.
Oh, wow.
And he kept the Madden curse alive too, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah, he
that
did.
following year. And I mean, he won the NFL MVP in 2005. The Seahawks were the best team in the league that year, and they should have won a Super Bowl. And I don't think that game is over yet because there's certain things that happened that shouldn't have happened.
Sticking with you, Dad. You and Les both had Hall of Famer Mr. Cortez Kennedy as being on the Mount Rushmore for the Seattle Seahawks. Talk about that defensive tackle.
Well, he's also first team, all 90s team. And when you think about the people that are on that defense, because the 90s is damn near part of the golden era, like the beginning part of the 90s and the 80s, when you have guys like Warren Sapp and Bryant Young behind you on the team, and then your contemporaries around you, if we're making this mythical team, are Bruce Smith, Reggie White, Chris Doman, John Randall, and Neil Smith.
Yeah.
And your first team, you're doing the damn thing.
Yeah.
So that's what stood out the most for me. I mean, 8-time Pro Bowler. He's a Hall of Famer. But when you put him up against those all-time greats, because to me, like I've said on several occasions, Reggie White, Ray Lewis, and Lawrence Taylor, in no particular order, 3 best defensive players of all time, and they're putting this man up there on that kind of list. And he didn't even play as long as he should have.
Right. What got me was he was a big man that moved. You know, before him, it was a lot of defensive linemen or defensive tackles who stood there, plugged
They
up
were
the run.
pluggers.
Yeah, you plug up the run, you stop the run, you let your outside, your Reggie Whites and Bruce Smiths rush from the outside, and that's what you did. As a second-year player, his first year, showed up 2 days before the first game and still balled out and made a Pro Bowl. The second year, on a 2-14 team, won Defensive Player of the Year with 14 and a half sacks.
Jesus.
I mean,
As a tackle.
as a defensive tackle, you don't hear that. You don't get that. People just want you to stand there and make sure they don't run. Plug up the hole.
So the linebackers
can eat. That's it. That's all they want.
Think
He
about
redefined that.
For that, in that same year, the defense gave up 18 or 19 points a game, which is great. The offense only scored 9 points a game.
Still one defensive player of the year.
Yeah.
So he balled. He did everything he could do.
Sometimes you can't fight it.
Junior Blue, staying with you, bringing in Red O. You guys had also the current owner of the Seattle Seahawks, Mr. Paul Allen. Talk about why Mr. Allen makes your list, and I have a feeling this is gonna be a recurring theme.
Basically, because the owner, Ken Behring, was bankrupt. He moved the Seattle Seahawks office to Anaheim because he wanted to get a little strip down there in Anaheim and played it. And Paul Allen came in and said, hold up, I'm from Seattle. Seahawks need to stay here. Went, bought the team, and kept them there 6 years later, had a new stadium built. I mean, he is the reason we have the Seattle Seahawks right now.
That's right.
If it wasn't for him, the Seattle Mariners would be the only team.
Exactly. I mean, and think about what kind of owner he is for Richard Sherman to go out and be like, my mama love him, my daddy love him, my wife love him, everybody loves him because he's willing to do what it takes to win until they caught up with him.
He is the total opposite of Snyder in DC.
He's the antithesis of a lot of owners.
Right.
You know?
But he was smart enough to get out the way and hire football people to run football.
Yes.
And it worked.
So staying with you, Red O, bringing in Kev, you guys, Kevin's last member on the Mount Rushmore and your member on the Mount Rushmore is the 12th man. And I thought it was a good time to introduce the 12th man after Paul Allen because he's responsible for that. Talk about the 12th man.
Well, for 10 years, the last 10 years, when they talk about home field advantage, the Seattle Seahawks have the number one home field verifiable advantage. They have the most plus when it comes to plus minus when they play at home.
Right.
You know, they score, I think it's 5 more points a game. And like besides the fact that decibel wise, they are the loudest fans. So it creates a thing where people come in, they know they're in Seattle.
Right.
And they know it's not just 11 men on the field. It is 11 men plus the 60,000 people in the stadium.
That was Paul Allen's vision when he wanted to build CenturyLink Field. He was trying to get it to replicate the old Washington Husky Stadium, which was a dominant home field advantage.
They're on top of you.
They're literally exactly. That's that college field. Kevin, talk about why Paul Allen was on. I mean, the 12th man. Was on your Mount Rushmore.
Oh, for obviously the reasons that Omar mentioned, but they actually retired. The franchise retired the jersey number 12 because of the fans that they've dubbed now the 12s. And, you know, and I think this was back in December of '84 that they, you know, retired the number. But, you know, Omar mentioned that they twice set the Guinness World Record for the loudest stadium in attendance. And in 2005, actually, opposing offenses were flagged for false start penalties over 140 times on separate occasions in the field. And from 2012 to 2015, they went 26-2 at CenturyLink Field, 4-0 in playoff games. And you look at their current success, you know, when you look at Russell Wilson and how great he is at home, he is 43-11 playing there, and on the road, we know he's a different guy. But that home field advantage is like none other.
So for me, Russell Wilson, that's perfect segue. Russell Wilson was one of my members of Seattle's Mount Rushmore for the simple fact that of what he's been able to achieve already. He's already the best quarterback in franchise history. He's got them a Super Bowl. He was, in fact, the third youngest quarterback to win a Super Bowl. He's won more games than any quarterback in NFL history through 6 games. He currently has the second highest passer rating of all time, only behind Omar's best friend, Aaron Rodgers. So, you know, for me, you know, that Super Bowl is a pivotal moment. It's a pivotal moment in any organization's lifetime. And for Russell Wilson to be able to do it because, you know, we've talked about, you know, you just talked about Cortez Kennedy and the fact that it was a great defense, but that offense only scored 9 points. The Legion of Boom is going to go down as one of those legendary defenses, but they don't win a Super Bowl. They don't go to back-to-back Super Bowls without Russell Wilson. And what he's been able to accomplish already through his first 6 years of career, I think is worthy of him being on the Mount Rushmore. But then my final one is Pete Carroll. And I'll tell you why. Paul Allen was somebody that I thought about, you know, putting him on there, and he's certainly pivotal. But what Pete Carroll was able to do, Paul Allen came into it, like you guys already talked about, having an understanding that he was an owner and that his job is to own the team, but he needs to put key people in place to actually make it happen, key football people. He started out with Mike Holmgren being his first hire as the coach and as the GM. And then after a period of success, he went to Pete Carroll and John Schneider. And the reason why I say Pete Carroll, because you had talked about Omar, Steve Largent, and the fact that he's this great receiver that is really forgotten and not really thought about. That's because prior to Pete Carroll, Seattle lacked identity. They lacked culture. And Pete Carroll was able to bring in his collegiate, enthusiastic, positive, infectious energy and was able to set a precedent, set a tone that is still with the organization right now. He instilled competition, and also he basically made them a team of underdogs. You look at the best draft picks that Pete Carroll and John Schneider have had, they've all been non-first rounders. Cam Chancellor, 5th round. Richard Sherman, 5th round. Russell Wilson, 3rd round. Bobby Wagner, 2nd round. Malcolm Smith, 7th round. Like, instilling a team of underdogs and competition and really bringing real identity to the Seahawks organization is why, for me, I have them on the Mount Rushmore. So, really good. Let's get into our Brexit Boo Bag winner, Les. Let's take it away.
So, our Brexit Boo Bag winner, we probably could rename the award after him because he would have been on it a few times already. Mr. Richie Incognito.
Mr. Can't Get Right.
Yeah, definitely. You know, his father passed during the offseason, which could take someone into a dark place. But for some reason, I feel like
He was already
Richie
in a dark place.
He lives in this dark place,
Right.
so I don't know where you go from there. But his father passed, and he was going to the funeral home to sign the cremation papers. And all of a sudden, they say he starts flipping out, banging on caskets, throwing stuff, and basically just wilding out. And he's 6'4", 350 pounds, wilding out in a funeral home. Then he starts talking about he wants to have his dad's head cut off for research. And now you have these funeral home workers a little worried because they're saying, no, we can't do that. You're here to sign these papers. So what does Richie do? Tells everybody in there, I'm about to go to the car and pop the trunk and shoot everybody in here. Now, Richie gets the police called on him.
Of course.
Of course, I'm gonna shoot everybody. Police get called.
Terrorist threats.
Exactly. So police come. Guess what they find in the truck? 2 Glocks and 3 rifles. So obviously,
for that war.
he had the exactly. He had the
Standard white
means-
person's starter kit.
Oh, wow.
He had the
And they
means.
starting young.
He had the means to go shoot this place up in the parking lot. He had it. So he gets arrested.
Made it out alive.
Made it out alive, gets arrested, and with true white privilege is released on $20,000 bond. And that is our off-season Brexit boot bag winner. Well, hold up, winner.
Golf clap from Mr. Richie Incognito.
Oh, goodness.
That
Richie,
is going to be
wild
tough
boy.
to beat.
It's gonna be tough
Hey.
to beat, and he has a history.
He does have a
and
history.
He's
He-
probably still mad he was arrested.
And his brain will be.
Oh yeah, they sending his brain straight to Boston when it's all done. So we'll go back into our history segment, but this time what we want to discuss is what has been the most, in our opinion, the most defining year in Seattle Seahawks history. Les, Kevin, and Devin have 2002. Les, I'll start with you, sir. Why is 2002, in your opinion, the most defining year in Seahawks history?
Well, look, they went from AFC West to the NFC West in 2002, and they got their new stadium. So that's a big year, changing everything. But if you look at the past before 2002, they had 26 seasons. They won their division 2 times and only had 10 winning seasons. So let's look at post 2002 after. They've had 11 winning seasons, 3 Super Bowl appearances, 1 victory, 1 loss because of coach's decision, and 1 loss that even the ref said, hey, I made some mistakes that caused y'all to lose. So, I mean, that
Jeff
year,
Triplett.
that year basically separated from we suck to we're going to Super Bowls and we're going to dominate. I mean, they won their division since 2002 8 times. So, I mean, that is a line where it says we're going to be good right here.
That
For me, them moving from the AFC West to the NFC West shows, and obviously, like Les said, that they've had their dominance. But if you look at the teams that have ruled the AFC West since they moved, they don't have a fucking shot. You have the 0-2 Raiders who went to the Super Bowl. Then you have the 0-3 Chiefs who had the best record in the league with Dante Hall returning kicks. Then you got Breeze and LT's Chargers. 13-3 Broncos that went to the AFC Championship with Jake Plummer. Then you had the Phillip Rivers, Sean Merriman Chargers that were dominant through the regular season for 4 years. Then you have Peyton Manning's Broncos. They would have been an afterthought. So them moving to the NFC was huge for them.
Well, I don't know if the Peyton Manning Broncos would have made it because we saw that.
Considering that was Omar's favorite year, 2014, sir. Talk about that.
2014. I think it's different because I don't think the ink is dry yet on everything that the ripple effects from that season. Still, things are still happening. You know, they had the Legion of Boom, and it looked like a burgeoning dynasty was coming. And you know, Pete he makes a decision.
Coach's decision.
That wasn't Pete. That was Darren Bevel. He just took the bullet for him.
SC.
Look, you see that shit? Fight the fuck on.
It
Come
was
on,
the
son.
OC.
Hey, the buck stops with Pete, right? Am I wrong?
Ask Coach Joe.
Oh shit! See,
Right? Buck stops with the head coach.
Now, and just to prove that point, Pete is one of those coaches. It's rah-rah. He's a player's coach. The players have I don't want to say they have the power, but he instills in them the responsibility. It's you who needs to succeed. And a lot of times, like, it didn't work the last time when Pete was in New England because he followed what's his name?
Tuna.
He followed Big Tuna, and who was a
Bill
strict coach.
Parcells.
Yes. And so when he got here, he was off the USC experience. And,
That was perfect timing.
right. But he had some cachet, but what he built, he broke down in one play when he decided to throw the ball instead of give it to your bell horse back in Marshawn Lynch. And they lost the game. And at that point, the players started to question everything he was saying. And once that happened, he lost the locker room. And Legion of Boom is now gone, doesn't exist anymore. That burgeoning dynasty is now trying to survive.
That's an interesting sort of take. So typically when people think about defining years, they think of it from a successful standpoint. And what you're arguing, Omar, is that
They fucked up the
it's
dynasty.
defining, but they fucked up the dynasty.
Yes, because now you have the Rams, who look like they're going to be gangbusters this year. You have Arizona, who David Johnson is back, and they have a young quarterback who they just drafted. Like, they don't look like... It looks like it could be another 3 or 4 years.
But here's a question, though, and I'll ask you, Kevin, about this. Was that really sustainable anyway? Because we all had talked about the offensive line, how they had forsaken the offensive line, and they were having to pay all of these young guys that I had talked about with Pete Carroll that were drafted in lower rounds. Now you got to start paying the piper on guys. Was it really going to be sustainable anyway?
No, but I think we have to look at the NFL a little different. You got to maximize the time frame that you have with specific guys. And I kind of look at the way their team was structured to the way the Ravens were, just because you had a capable defense. When we won the Super Bowl in 2012, you have a capable defense, young quarterback, young pieces on offense. You maximize what you can get out of them. They went to 3 Super Bowls, should have won 2. They went to 2 Super Bowls, should have won both of them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you can't, like you said, you can't pay everybody.
Should have won 3.
You keep
You're
the
right,
pieces
Kev.
you can to have as an organization. You mean?
At the same time, the players in the locker room have to believe in the coach. They no longer believe in Pete Carroll as a coach.
So you got rid of
Right,
him.
and I think the
just
points
running
you
it
made
back.
earlier, Keon, about making them on your Mount Rushmore, I was going to say it's going to be very interesting to see how they go moving forward with that core gone, with Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson now being the face of everything. I love Russ, but how good is he really? We're going to find out, I think, this year.
Well, judging by that offensive line and the fact that they ain't never had a receiver.
Seahawks been on his back the last 2 years.
Real quick, I had 97. We don't really need to go into deep because you guys had talked about Paul Allen being on your Mount Rushmore. But basically, I just feel like that was the pivotal point. Like Les talked about, they was on the verge of moving to Anaheim. Paul Allen really was keeping them because he's from Seattle, and he just wanted to keep his team in Seattle. And the other thing was this. He did a video. This was around the election because his whole agreement with the city of Seattle was, I'll buy the team if you vote for us to build a new stadium. If they would have said no, he would not have bought the team. And I think everything else that's happened after that, combined with his ownership style, I think has been a direct result. So for me, 97 was the pivotal year. Let's get into hot topics, our football tea. And I will start with you, Dad. First of all, Odell Beckham Jr.
Won't he?
Got his money. He got his
God is
money.
good.
5 years, $95 million. I think the key parts of the contract are it's $65 million guaranteed.
Yep.
And it's a $20 million a year deal for the first 3 years.
And after that,
And then after that, we can talk about it.
He holding out.
What are your thoughts? What's your takeaway on that? Good deal, bad deal, fair deal?
So here's my thought. Right now, you can argue that he is the face of the league in the biggest market in the country. You can argue he's the face of the league. Most social media followers, that stuff's big now. So you can also argue that he's top 5 in his position.
Dig Juice videos.
Oh my God. Just keep going.
So he's with that big contract, which they've made a lot about it. He's only the 20th highest paid player in the league. So here's some guys that are ahead of him on that list. Jimmy Garoppolo, Alex Smith, Kirk Cousins, Joe Flacco, Sam Bradford, Ryan Tannehill. Do you think he's more valuable than any of those people that I've mentioned right now?
No.
He's not.
Quarterbacks are always going to be more
The
valuable.
Those
position.
guys? No. Forget the position. Those names
But
that I
that's
mentioned.
one in the same.
Maybe
though.
Tannehill.
No,
I've
it's not.
seen Odell
Name
Beckham
again?
throw the ball further than Ryan Tannehill.
I just said maybe Tannehill. Like Garoppolo is the face of San Francisco. Like he is.
He's doing a good job of being that face right
yes,
now.
he is.
He's enjoying being that.
But my point is this. That guy is a game changer, and it goes
Did
into
we see New York's offense?
right without him.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you look at that, and he's top 5 in that position, and he's your next question is setting the market. Why not it be him? He's under 25 years old.
That's the question, right?
I actually think it's a good deal.
Does this deal, Kevin, does it set the market for specifically Julio Jones and Tyreek Hill, or is this an exceptional deal?
I think it will set the market. And what's interesting when we look at, I believe it's Julio, they had the negotiations over the summer, but ultimately before next year, he's going to have to come up with a new deal, right?
Yeah, that was the
So
agreement.
you
That's what got him into camp.
That's my point. So when that time comes around for Julio, and then you even look at guys like DeAndre Hopkins in Houston, who I think he maybe has like a couple more years before he gets there.
But he's getting like
It's
15 million, 16 million right now.
Right. I think it was easier for New York to do it because they don't necessarily have guys in other skill positions that are due for big contracts. Eli's aging his way out. Saquon is a rookie. Outside of that, I'm not confident in anybody else on that team. You look at Atlanta. I mean, they need that depth. We talked about it before on confirmation bias. That offense doesn't have 2 or 3 other options or 2 running backs coming out the backfield. We know what they're about. And same thing with Houston. They have a lot of young pieces, but I don't know. I think that deal worked for New York because Odell was all they really had.
And it works. It's a great deal for New York because I think that the first 3 years are the ones where he get paid the most money. And after that, because that's when you got to start thinking about paying Saquon, and he makes less money. And if he doesn't work out by then, you can get rid of him.
Right. Staying with go Kev.
Just a quick question as far as Odell. Do you guys think, or are you at least optimistic that he will mature and prove to be worthy of this kind of thing? I mean, his press conference earlier today was kind of mild-mannered, and I don't want to say it seemed rehearsed, but he seemed like he knew the type of or he had to give off to kind of make this the whole thing work. I'm just with the stuff that happened with him over the summer, man.
I mean, Kev, he
don't know.
couldn't come out like Tron from the Chappelle show. So
He got 3 years to figure it out.
That's funny.
He literally has 3 years to figure it out.
You know, I think he's ready to play football. I think that was a true statement. You know, when he said that shoulder's been lifted and I can just focus on playing the game. I think he's ready to play ball. He didn't play last year.
And dance.
And I think he's gonna do. Yeah, I think he's gonna do well. I think they understand that they got to live with the antics because that's just par for the course. But he's all about ball, and from everything that's been reported,
Say that again.
he's all about ball.
Campbell Soup.
And from everything that's been reported, the Giants were really just impressed with the fact that he came in, he showed up to minicamp, he showed up to training camp, he's healthy, he's focused. So, you know, kudos to him. Let's stay with wide receivers. I want to go to you, Junior Blue. Marquise Lee, done for the year for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Fight on.
On a hit in the knee. And we talked earlier in the show about those hits. Jalen Ramsey, in particular, said that the new helmet rule is the reason why Marquise Lee is injured. I don't know about that personally. What are your thoughts on that?
That statement made no sense to me.
He said a lot of nothing.
Does he
no
ever
sense.
say any shit that makes sense?
First
Sleep.
off, the guy got called for the penalty.
Underrated.
Exactly, he got called for the penalty.
Overrated.
So I don't understand how
Sassy.
that's what they trying to clean up.
Right.
If that was the cause, they trying to clean that up. He got called for the 15-yard penalty. So what Jalen said made no sense. But it wasn't because of the new rule that he got hurt. It's a football play.
I blame karma. I'm not blaming the rule. It's karma because he came out and shitted on almost every quarterback in
Except
the NFL.
for his own.
And now we're gonna have to find out what Mr. Blake Bortles is about. Without they lost Allen Hurns, and then Lee goes
And
down.
Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson.
No, they lost
No,
both.
they lost both.
They lost both Allens.
They lost their top
and-
3 receivers.
Hearns in Dallas.
You're proving my point. Now
Did
we
Mercedes
have to
Lewis
find
retire?
out what Blake is about.
Well, here's the thing, right? Did he really not shit on Blake? He said Blake do what he got to do.
Yeah.
That sounds like a politically correct answer.
But coming from Jalen Ramsey, I don't know what that means.
Oh, that's funny. Red O, should Jacksonville call Dez?
They won't. Because Coughlin ain't doing that shit.
Right.
That is an anathema to what he does.
Right.
So D.D. Westbrook, Keelan Cole, and Dante Moncrief.
Yep.
Is
A lot of
what it
waiver
is.
wire.
Whole bunch of Fournette.
All right, staying right there real quick, rapid fire. We'll go winners and losers from preseason 2018. I will start with you, Dad. Give me your winner and your loser from this year's preseason.
Winner is definitely Eli Manning and Pat Shermer's offense. Odell signs a big deal.
Yeah.
You have Saquon, who looks like the real deal. I think Eli's going to have a good year. Loser, in my opinion, the Kansas City Chiefs' entire defense.
Is Eric Berry hurt again?
Why did you
Yeah.
say that?
He's missed 16 straight days of practice. They lost Peters in the offseason.
Right.
They made Chase Daniels, no offense, and
Look
Brandon
like
Wheaton
an
look
all-star.
like Joe Montana. They are condom sex.
Junior Blue?
For my winners, I had the Rams. I mean, they had a top-rated offense. They add Sue, Peters, Talib to bolster that defense. Added Brandon Cooks to the offense.
Sounds
I mean,
like
that's
they
a win
close
in
to a
off-season.
Donald deal, too.
Close to a Donald deal. I mean, that's a winning offseason. Loser, and I'm so happy to say this.
Raiders?
The Patriots. The Patriots. They lost their left tackle, lost top running back, traded a 1,000-yard receiver in Brandon Cooks, lost Amendola to Miami. Edelman suspended for the first 4 games, and Tom Brady's a year older.
And they're still going to win their division.
And they're still going to win. I was going to say that. They're still going to win the division because who's going to catch them?
Tom Brady's a thug.
They could win that division with 8 wins.
He out here hanging up on folks. He a thug.
Kev, your winner and loser.
My winner is Mr. Robert Griffin III. Last year, he didn't have a job. This year, he has a job.
Hey, Trump
Jokes
said
aside,
black folks.
he did play. He played very well in the preseason. I'm not just saying that because he's my Ravens, but he's shown that he can throw the ball downfield. He can avoid getting hit. He's matured. He doesn't necessarily have that selfish approach to him. He's kept his head down. I think if we don't keep him, which I hope we do, If we don't, another team will be calling them.
Trump said black folks is getting jobs out here, so I don't know.
Way more.
Hey,
than
unemployment 3%.
Oh
My loser, I got Mr. Rain Dakota Prescott, who
Who's this tight
has
end?
been losing. Has been losing. He lost his two most reliable weapons, Des Bryant and Jason Witten. His offensive line is in shambles. I'm not confident with the supporting cast that he has, and half the black delegation has already put him on a trading block. It's rough out here for Mr. Prescott.
He's back up there with
be a good season for him.
he's up there with a Tiger. Tiger wanted to remind you that he's still on a trading block too.
Because he deserved to be on a goddamn trading block.
Red O, who are your winners and losers from the preseason?
Winners is Cleveland.
That was also my winner as well. Hard Knocks, man.
Man, you know
The production makes it look good too.
It's the production. It's the production, but it's the desperation. You can smell these
Right.
coaches are desperate. They want to change.
the issue, the
gonna
problem
have no
I
job.
have, the problem I have is Hard Knocks. The way they film it, it makes you believe.
It does.
And it has never worked.
My
It
hand
has
is raised.
Never worked.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting there rooting for Dorsey's greatest. Like I hope it works because, and I will admit this, my man looks a lot better than I thought he was gonna look. Baker.
Yeah, see, the only problem, the fact that Baker looks good is cool, but it's still, because you guys know I've spent the whole offseason shitting on them because they should have taken Saquon. They still could have
Because they
taken,
still had Baker
they could
at
have still
4.
taken
Right.
Baker
And then they
Mayfield.
didn't get Chubb.
And then they didn't get Chubb, right? But I'm
looks real?
with you though. I'm with you that I am rooting for them, and I do want to believe. I do. So yeah, I'm with you. You're a loser.
I do want to believe. And my loser, Raiders. I think spending $100 million on John Gruden will be a monumental mistake. Monumental.
All right, that's interesting.
We're just gonna keep pushing there.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
Well,
another
maybe
show.
we'll revisit that during the season.
will.
Actually.
Let's see how it goes.
And
We have a segment.
when Khalil Mack gets traded.
Ooh.
Go ahead,
I'm on the
Kenyon.
fence about that.
I have Des Bryant. I mean,
He
come
had
on.
a job last year.
Come on, bro.
He
had a
got
job
a job
last year. You could have had a job
Last week.
No, you could have had a job
In March.
2 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. You got picky. Okay, you could have had a job 2 weeks ago. You didn't want that job because, of course, when time passes, the need decreases. You're not going to get the same offer that you could have gotten if you're taking it. And now you're in a situation, okay, you act like you're controlling the narrative when you say, oh, I'm a play football later this year. No, you're not going to play
He
football
gonna
at
be on
all.
the couch. Hey,
The-
hey, come over to the Stray. You can watch the games with us on Sunday.
Exactly. Because the hardest position on offense to learn mid-season, at the beginning of the season, and have it is receiver. He's useless.
Ask Chad Johnson in New England.
He's completely useless. He's not going to play in the NFL this
The
year.
Ravens offered him 3 years, 21 mil, and he turned it down.
And now he doesn't have a job. So yeah, Des Bryant, you're the biggest loser for me. This has been a good first show. Omar is already ready.
Mid-season.
Mid-season form.
Sip again.
As a reminder, you can follow us
Red O, baby.
everywhere on social media. Our handle is @TheLeagueAM. We will be back next week. We will do our 2018 NFL season preview as well as have a special guest. You guys got anything else as we start to
Shout
kick
out
off
to
season
Coach
3?
Joe.
Yeah.
Shout out to
2-0 St.
2-0
Bernard Vikings.
all day.
Kai Torres, Jai Torres.
Yeah.
And then shout out
Happy
to the
birthday, Elise.
Yeah,
Mm.
2021.
Yes.
And then shout out to the UK. We be there, baby.
Yeah, shout out to Steffi too.
And
on that
Hey, shout out to the Man Cave. Because
Yes.
it's real nice.
Yeah, man.
Fireside chat.
All right, let's get out of here. Let's take a shot and get out of here. We will see you next week. Cheerio.
Cheers,
Three
Zach.
names, no games as I
Y'all
run it
got
down the
jokes and Eric
line.
Reed don't
We got
have a
Kenny
job.
Ken put 100 on the T's with the streak for the cash. ESPN. Seth Curry with the shot. In reality, he's more like Seth, but he's all we got. Up next is Gentleman Jack, better known as Junior Blue. We told him not to do it anyway, but he did what he do. To his right is Devin, that dude, Dad or Dirt Ass Dan. Just don't ask him a question, cause then he'll answer your question with another question, and then he'll add another question on top of that question. Damn. And I'm Red O, the buck wild problem child.
Flow butter, aka John Cutter.
It's the league ambassadors, and we playing to win. At the 2-yard line, and make no mistake, we running it in.